Hey everyone, so we are making our popcorn journals, and if you're not sure what that is, I'll link to the blog post in the description below that talks about it. But basically, I'm going to be making a haphazard journal here. And I wanted to share a little bit with you about my thought process. So this is not the best way to make a journal. This isn't, the only way or anything like that. I was working at my studio and realized that I had brought all my journal making, my book binding, and all that kind of stuff. I had brought all those supplies home. And so I thought, oh, I guess I'll have to wait and do this another time. And then I just felt like, you know what? It would be a really great challenge to use what I had on hand at the studio to make myself a little journal. And the idea of this journal is that it's something that you can take 2 minutes and sit down and do a little art. So I thought it not being precious wouldn't be that bad of an idea. So that is why I'm using the materials I'm using and doing things the way I'm doing. So if you're wondering if this is the best way to make a beautiful journal that you're going to treasure, no, I would say that this is a great way. If you have limited supplies, you really don't need a lot to make this journal. I'm using a glue stick, printer paper, and as you can see, it's a marker box that I had here in the studio. So any kind of cardboard that you have, grab your recycling can. And all I did was cut off the flaps, and then I used regular copy paper to kind of wrap the outside like a present, so that it was, to cover up the imaging on the front. And now I am just cutting some printer paper in half, which happened to work out really well and fit in my journal that way. I really didn't want to have to waste a lot of paper to cut anything or to fold, and I couldn't sew because I didn't have, or stitch anything in because I didn't have anything to stitch with here. So what I'm using is some Mod Podge and paintbrush, and I've clipped my pages together as even as I can. And then I am just going to apply a few layers of Mod Podge. So I'm doing a layer, then I'm going to let it dry. I'll do another layer and let it dry. If you don't have Mod Podge, you could use any kind of PVA, so any kind of white glue would work fine. I've done this with other projects before. The one thing to consider is with this kind of technique is that the pages will be able to be pulled off. So it's not going to keep everything, bound in the way that, sewing would. So I just wanted to point that out. So now that I have my cardboard, I am just grabbing some colors, my favorite colors, and slapping some paint down. I'm approaching this similar to how I would approach an art journaling page or a new painting or something like that, where I just start getting some color down, and I'm using some inexpensive acrylic paints. You might be able to use markers. I think that markers might bleed through the paper, and you might see some of the texture underneath. So that would depend on what kind of box you're using. But give it a shot. Give it a shot. See how it comes out. You could collage over the cover, so you could grab some images from magazines, and or from your own images. If you have your own art pieces, you could use those, like the painted pages that we've done in the past, and you could use those, and then you could cut them up and collage them on here. So there's lots of different things you can do. I'm choosing to just cover it with paint, and I'm not even rinsing my brush. I'm just adding color and putting it down wherever I feel like it. And this isn't, I want to share with you that this is really about playing, and this is about enjoying it. I had so much fun making this journal, and I won't pretend that it's the most amazing journal that's ever been made, or anything like that. But I think there's something to be said when you create a piece that you love and that you had fun making. I think there's something about the energy that you're putting into that creation, and that matters so much. So I just want to share that with you, that if you have very limited supplies and you'd love to try to make your own journal, I just gave it another second coat of glue here. I was letting some of my paint dry, but I just want to share that with you, so that if you're hesitant to maybe get started, or to paint your own or to make your own journal and you're kind of wondering whether or not you can do this and you'll have a lot of supplies, give it a shot. Use a glue stick. And here I'm just looking for some images to possibly take out. And then I had this idea. I'm like, I want to put a bird on here. I don't know why I want to put a bird on here, but I just felt like this journal needed a bird. So that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna paint a bird and we're gonna put the bird on here. So these little pauses that you're seeing in the video are me searching for supplies. Am I the only one who's doing that? I have everything organized and everything has a place, and in the midst of creating, it's almost like, I'm tossing things up in the air and I can't seem to find them. So I thought it'd be fun to leave some of those pauses in to share that if you're somebody who's always hunting for your supplies, you're not alone. In fact, I do it when I'm gardening. I'm always looking for my gardening tools. But now I grabbed some tissue paper. This is the bleeding art tissue paper. I haven't noticed it bleed much when I use it with glue. For me personally, but if that's something that's a concern to you, definitely try it out before putting it on a piece. But it's what I had here in the studio, so that's what I used, and I'm just using it to add some texture. It's also going to give a little more stability to the journal itself, so I just go ahead and have some fun covering it up and adding little blocks of color. Again, this is really about the process for me. This isn't about trying to make some wonderful piece. It's just, I love collage. I love getting messy. And so for me, this is about having that kind of time to play. And that's what I hope this journal will be for. And that's what I'm going to use this journal for, is just to sit down for those moments maybe where I just don't feel up to creating, but I know how important it is for me, how great it is for my well-being, how good it is for my mental health. And I need to make time to do that. And sometimes taking the time to do the things that I know make me feel better are the last things I want to do. And it's so important. In fact, even as I'm recording this, I didn't feel like coming into the studio today. I really didn't. And I had a great time once I was here. I've been doing watercolor. I'm editing this video. And once I was here, I was in the flow and in the rhythm of it. And so sometimes that push for our, we have to give ourselves to kind of, go and do something is important. And I thought the idea of having a journal just sitting there with, you could have 3 of your favorite color markers, or oil pastels, or whatever kind of medium you use, and a pen, a pencil. You could do anything you wanted and just have it sitting, somewhere where you can easily just grab it, especially those times when you're not feeling like you want to do it, and to just grab it and, make a mark, start scribbling a little bit. And hopefully, if you have fun making the journal, that energy will inspire you when you see it to, have fun like that again. Because that's what I'm hoping this will do for me. In fact, when I came in and saw it again in the studio, I smiled and I was like, it's not perfect. But it's very much like me, it was playful and it was fun. What I'm doing here, and this is not necessary, is I'm just adding a little bit. I have painter's tape here in the studio just to kind of reinforce the spine. I wanted to make it a little sturdier. I hate when they're really floppy. Depending on what you're using, what kind of box you're using, this may not be necessary. I don't know that it was necessary for me either, but I had it. I actually wasn't going to use it because I thought, I really loved the idea once I got it going of keeping this so basic for somebody who's maybe just getting started out and doesn't have, an awl to punch holes to make a book binding or any of those kinds of things. And I thought this is a great way to get started. So I didn't even want to use the painter's tape, but you could use masking tape. You could use, if you wanted to reinforce your spine, you could also use like a brown paper bag. So if you have that, you could cut up a piece and wrap it around. You could use magazine pages and just wrap them around the edges like that, cut them to length, and fold them over and glue them down and let them dry really well. But here I'm giving, I think this is the 3rd coat now of the Mod Podge just to make the book, and really wanting to kind of make sure this is going to stay together somewhat. Again, what's really nice about this technique is that you can make tearaway pages. So if you make a page in your journal that you love and you want to hang up, you can easily remove it from the journal doing it this way. But again, stitching is of course an option, but I liked having to challenge myself to use whatever I had on hand. And what I'm doing here now is I have a piece of my painted paper. It's not the right length, as you can see, but I decided to just go with it. I'm wrapping this around to kind of give a little more structure to it, and kind of hold everything together a little bit better. Kind of like when you buy a notebook in the store, it has that piece that goes over the top, and that's kind of what I was working on here. And I'm just pressing it down now to give it a little bit more security. So once I let everything dry, now I'm going to go in and I'm going to cover up that blue piece with some paper. Again, not, it depends on how you're structuring your book, whether or not this is necessary. But I just wanted to kind of cover up that blue painter's tape a little bit. And you, of course, could come in and you could give this whole inside a cover coat of paint and really jazz it up if you wanted to do that. What I'm doing here is I'm folding up the side now just to kind of crease that in so that the piece of paper that I put here to reinforce bends well. And then I'm going to take the back page of that stack of paper, and that's how I'm going to glue it down. I was really figuring this journal out as I was making it. So I'm not saying that, again, this is the best way to do it, but it worked out very well, and it's going to hold, I think, the whole notebook in fairly well. I wouldn't be too rough on it, but this is where I'm deciding and kind of figuring out how I'm going to attach this into the journal. Originally, I had thought about stapling it into the journal, but the number of pages that I added, I don't think it would have stapled well. So that's an option too. If you have like a long reach stapler, you could staple your pages like right into your journal here, if you wanted to do that. But I decided at this point that I'm going to stick with the Mod Podge since I couldn't get my aliens to come out. Come out of the tube, and I'm just going to go with what I have here in hand. And I think that's so important because it can be real easy to think that you need to have all these supplies and use a lot less Mod Podge than I just poured out. I did not think it was going to come out as fast as it did, but I used most of it, and then some of it I scraped back into the bottle. But yeah, it's so important, I think, to not feel like you need to go out and buy anything in particular, and not to discount the creative expression, that's the word I'm looking for, that can happen from trying to use what you have available to you. And that goes with everything, right? Like life too. If we can just try to use what we have available to us in the moment, sometimes we might find a better way to do things. And even if it's not the best way to do something, it could be a fun way to do something. And for something like this, art journaling, I don't think it has to be precious. You can pour way too much glue out and scrape it back into the bottle, and life still goes on, and everything's good. So I think it's important to allow yourself some time to maybe play with what's available. After I was talking about this video, my oldest daughter, she had suggested that I do a challenge where it's, like they pick my art supplies, and where she said that's just like those challenge videos. But it's interesting to see what you can come up with when you're just working with what's available to you. And I guess that's the same if you take supplies with you and a sketch out in the field, or if you're going on vacation and you're bringing certain supplies with you. You are limiting yourself, and sometimes the most creative or the most fun experiences come from those moments. And now I'm going to get some watercolor paper because I've decided, as I mentioned, that the journal needs a bird. We don't know why, but I thought a whimsical bird would be a lot of fun. And I got these pencils in, they're called Cretacolor. I think that's how you say it. I got them in an Art Snacks subscription box, and I thought it'd be fun to. I had tried it out on something else before, and it was really fun. So I'm doing a quick sketch. They are water soluble, so when I go to paint in the bird, it's kind of cool how they lead together. And I had a lot of fun sketching it out. And so I'm just coming up with the shape really that I'm going to attach to my journal cover. And then I'm going to cut it out and glue it that way. And this is just a very inexpensive set of watercolors. I think I got them off Amazon. I know Michaels has sets like these for, fairly inexpensive. I think this one was $9 or $8, something like that. And as I'm using the water, it's activating the outside of where I've done the sketch, which is really, it's not showing up on camera as well, but it's like a blue tint, which is marrying really pretty with the purple for the bird. And I'm just filling it in loosely. Again, this is about having fun and playing with my supplies. Not working on a masterpiece here. This is just me having fun playing with a very whimsical kind of childlike bird that I'm having fun drawing, and that's really what this is about. So once I did that, I would recommend waiting for it to dry, but when you're filming, I thought I'd get the video done. So I just cut the bird out, and she's going to get attached to the cover of the journal. And you can really, as I said, do anything you wanted to decorate your journal cover. You don't have to use white copy paper. You could use brown paper bags to cover it if you wanted. There's just tons of ways to make a journal. This is just how I made it at this time. And I'm actually really looking forward to creating in it. I know copy paper is really thin, so it's not the best thing for watercolor, but you know what? You can still use it. It'll work, and it'll make some really cool texture. So I'm gonna have fun with that and see where it comes. So now I'm deciding that I'm gonna have to I can't just have the bird floating off in the space here. So I'm going to paint a tree. And I've done a piece like this. I did this on another journal actually, almost very similar, I'm remembering now, where I had a bird on a tree. And I don't know why. I love birds, and these little whimsical birds just make me very happy. And I've always loved painting trees. I have since I was a kid. I always painted trees the same way, pretty much how you're going to see me painted here. And I didn't do it in this time. I might have to go back and add it. I always had like a fairy hole at the bottom at the base of the tree. And that's pretty much how I have painted trees my entire life. And it makes me happy, and it's a lot of fun. So I encourage you that if you're going to make a journal like this with the idea that it's going to be something that you're going to come to when you don't feel like creating, but you're going to create anyway, do something that makes you happy. Make it with your favorite colors. Use your favorite images. And if for you having something that's a little more special is going to get you to work toward, then I encourage you definitely to make it something that's more polished. If that's something that you like, go and do that. There's so many wonderful tutorials online that you can look at. That's how I've learned how to make any of my journals. Jenny Belly is great if you want to use upcycled materials and things like that. She's got a ton of great tutorials on that. Victoria Designs has ways on making journals, and then there's just so many. There's so many, but those are some of the ones that I've learned the most from in journal making, and you really can't go wrong if you want something a little bit more polished than what I've done. But I think it's fun. I think it's fun to try something different too. You could have painted this a solid color because you had the copy paper, it was nice and smooth. If you didn't add the texture, you could absolutely do just a solid color, so you could paint it with your favorite color. You could wrap it, instead of using copy paper, you could wrap it with wrapping paper. and that would work really well too. So many options, so many options. Don't be limited. But you'll see here that I'm gonna let this dry now that I've got my little whimsical tree, and then once it's all dry, my little bird will be glued on. But I'm gonna use, these are just some big permanent markers that I got at the dollar store, and then some Crayola watercolors that I'm using just to give the illusion of a scribbled on wing and a little tail here. And yeah, you can see this is just play, and that is, yeah, that's so much fun. So I'm just showing you where it's going to go once everything's dry. And then you can see here how the whole thing looks once it's all done.